Hello, my name is Anne Gutschmidt. I'm from the University of Rostock in Germany, and I'm working at the Computer Science department, which you can see here. And I've conducted an experiment on participatory enterprise modeling supported by these guys. And first of all, we have to explain what participatory enterprise modeling is all about.
Well, the basic idea of participatory enterprise modeling is to let stakeholders actively take part in the modeling process. So they actively contribute to the creation of the model. Usually the stakeholders come together to generate and gather and exchange ideas and knowledge. They discuss, and sometimes they even learn from each other, and hidden conflicts may be uncovered. We engage, or we propose, participatory enterprise modeling because it is said to increase model quality and commitment to the model. The stakeholders don't do this on their own, they have some support. There are so-called method experts who are trained in the modeling notation, in the modeling method, and so on. And they support the stakeholders who are called domain experts because they contribute their domain knowledge. And connected to this, I was interested in two factors that might have an influence on how domain experts perceive model quality and how committed they feel towards the model. The first factor is this gathering of the domain experts, this collaboration part. What kind of influence does this collaboration have on how they perceive model quality, the domain experts, and how committed they feel towards the model? The second aspect is connected with the method experts, because the method experts play a very important role. They have a big influence on what the final model will look like. They make corrections and so on. And usually after a modeling session, you do not have a finished and perfect model. The method experts have to revise the model. And my question was, what influence do these revisions have on how the domain experts eventually perceive model quality and how committed they feel towards the model? Now let's take a look at the dependent variables in our experimental setting. The first one is perceived model quality. Model quality in general has been discussed a lot, especially in terms of frameworks that suggest how to attain good model quality. Quality has different dimensions, such as the syntactical correctness of a model, its readability, comprehensibility, completeness, and exactness. Empirical work has shown a connection between syntactic quality and comprehension that means that people will understand a model better when it's syntactically correct. And there has been some other empirical work that showed that the perceived quality increases after corrections have been made by others. So far, I have talked about commitment as a second dependent variable in this experimental setting. Commitment is, however, very hard to invoke in such a short period of time. So I decided to concentrate on so-called psychological ownership, because it is said to be a kind of precondition for effective commitment. Psychological ownership means that you feel you own something, such as this is my house, this is my car, this is my wife, this is my idea, this is my model. Psychological ownership emerges when you have control of the target, when you are familiar with it, and when you invest something of yourself into that target, such as time, labor, energy, and so on. And for us, the question was whether psychological ownership is different depending on the setting of a modeling project. So on the one hand, we have a setting that is collaborative, where we gather several stakeholders, several domain experts who are supported by a method expert, and together they create a model. On the other hand, we also have several domain experts, but the method expert works with them individually so that they create several individual models. That was the first independent variable in our experimental design. The second one is about the method expert, the revisions. So in the collaborative setting, we will probably have the need for revisions, because after a first modeling sessions, there will probably not be a finished and perfect model. So the model has to be revised and shown again to the domain experts. On the other side, on the other hand, we have the individual setting, and there we have several individual models, and these models will have to be merged and put into one joined model. And the question is whether these revisions also cause differences in psychological ownership. With regard to perceived model quality, the research questions are formulated in a very similar way. So first, is there a difference in perceived model quality comparing collaborative and individual modeling? And is there a difference in perceived model quality before and after the method expert's revision? Here you can see the final experimental design. So we had two factors. First, the level of collaboration, and then the influence of revisions of the method expert. So treatment 1 was the individual setting, where in the first meeting 5 single meetings took place with one domain expert and one method expert who created a model. And then a collaborative setting, there was only one collaborative meeting where 5 domain experts and one method expert together created a model. And after the modeling session, in both cases, the psychological ownership and perceived model quality were measured using a questionnaire. In the individual setting, the method expert had to merge the 5 individual models into one joint model, and they also had to add information which could not be modeled during the first meeting. In the collaborative setting, there was already one joint model, but the method expert also had to add some information here. In the second meeting then, in the individual setting, there were 5 single meetings again. The domain experts met the method expert individually, and there they could have a look at the model, at the joint model, and discuss further changes. And afterwards, again, psychological ownership and perceived model quality were measured. In the collaborative setting, there was only one meeting where the 5 domain experts were gathered again, and the method expert showed the model, the final model, to the domain experts, and then they could again discuss further changes, and psychological ownership and perceived model quality were measured. The task we set for the participants was to create a model describing the process of registering a final paper at the university. So we were in a university context. They had 30 minutes time, and on the whole we had 20 participants, which were assigned to 4 groups, and each group consisted of 1 or 2 lecturers, 1 person that was involved in administrative processes, and 2 or 3 students, but always 5 persons in one group, and they were supported by a facilitator.
Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, we had to do this as an online experiment. We used Kawemo for process modeling and Zoom for video conference.
Now let's come to the results of the study. First, I had to perform some factor analyses and reliability analyses on the scales for psychological ownership and for perceived model quality. For psychological ownership, I found 2 factors. 1 factor measuring collective psychological ownership and 1 factor measuring individual psychological ownership. Collective means this is our model, and individual means this is my model. For perceived model quality, I also found 2 factors. 1 factor seemed to measure general quality. It consisted of only 1 item, and this item was a statement that said, this model is of good quality. And the second factor, here I found items that were measuring specific characteristics of a model. Was it comprehensive? Was it exhaustive? Was it well drawn? and was it exact? And to examine then in the next step the influence of collaboration and of revisions by the method experts on these 4 different factors, I used an analysis of variance, a mixed analysis of variance. Here I will show you the detailed results of the analysis. So when we compare the collaborative setting with the individual setting, we have not found any difference concerning individual and collective psychological ownership, and we did not find any difference concerning general model quality. But we have found a difference concerning specific model quality characteristics. When we compare the state before and after revisions by the method expert, we have not found any difference in individual psychological ownership and collective ownership, psychological ownership, but we have found differences with regard to specific model quality characteristics and general model quality. So, to sum up, regarding the research questions, we can say that we have not found any difference in psychological ownership comparing collaborative and individual modeling. We have not found a difference in psychological ownership before and after the method expert's revision, but we have found a difference in perceived model quality comparing collaborative and individual modeling. And we have found a difference in perceived model quality before and after the method expert's revision. When you have a look at the descriptive statistics that are contained in our paper, you will see that the collective psychological ownership is consistently higher than the individual psychological ownership. And what was interesting for us was we also conducted some interviews with the participants afterwards, and especially in the individual setting, it became clear that when the participants said this is our model, they did not seem to refer to the other participants, but to the method expert. So we have to be careful about that. And what we've also learned is that the participants, they consider the revisions by the method expert as very valuable, as an improvement to the model. So they really value the intense exchange with the method expert, especially in the individual setting. So this leads us to the lessons learned, and it's a research in progress, and we wanted to learn from the study. And what we've learned is that, of course, we have to assess ownership of the method expert from the domain expert's perspective. So do they consider the method expert as a co-owner of the model? We would like to test further measuring instruments for perceived model quality. And what is still to be done is to analyze the models we have now. And we would like to examine modeling tasks that require more creativity and discussion and looking for consensus. Because the process that we picked for the study now seemed to be clear to everyone, and there was no fighting and no arguing. So it would be nice, actually, for the next study to have a more controversial topic. We've seen that no matter whether it is a collaborative setting or an individual setting, collective psychological ownership seemed to be pretty high. But as I've said, in the individual setting, it might be that when they say it's our model, they include the method expert and maybe not the other participants. So still in the collaborative setting, or the collaborative setting might be better for collective psychological ownership. Method experts play a crucial role for perceived model quality. They may take on the task of modeling without having a negative influence on psychological ownership. So the more guidance there is by the method expert and the more exchange there is with the modeling expert, the better it will be for the perceived model quality. Now, thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions.